Well, we've been in a series through Advent and through Christmas where we've been looking at Jesus's family tree, the family lineage, the genealogy, and all of the people that are included in this story. And so Mark, he's not here this morning. Today is Jody's birthday, all right? So maybe you want to send her a text or something like that, and she gets 100 text messages. But Mark wanted to record a video for you still to introduce some of the people from our congregation who are going to be sharing this morning about them being joined into this great family tree. So you can take a look at it.
Behind me in my office is an image that was given to me by Margaret Taves, painted by her mom, of Coretta Scott King. It was on the cover of a Time magazine the week after her husband, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., was assassinated. When Margaret gave it to me, she said her dad, the Reverend Ed Taves, always used to say, "Mom even got the sorrow right in her eyes." I was talking with a dear pastor friend recently who shared that a member of his congregation had recently completed suicide, leaving behind 3 children, 18, 22, and 25. And when my friend called, he was actually headed to the hospital to sit with the family as they removed life support and prepared to donate their dad's organs to other people in need. It reminded me, that act of moving towards this family's pain, of a theologian I love named Andy Rood, who says, "Followers of Jesus join sorrow." And that was what my friend was about to do. He said he had sat with the 18-year-old daughter, who was a member of his youth group, who was struggling to come to terms with her dad's passing. And she said something so wise and so profound. She said, "I've never been more desperate for God and the church than I am right this moment, right now." See, the deep wisdom of her desire, it's found in the fact that the gospel of Jesus Christ always is at its best when life is at its worst. In this Advent, we've discovered just how true that is in the family tree of Jesus. We've seen through Tamar's story and Rahab's story and Ruth's story and Bathsheba's story and Mother Mary's story that often the hardest things in life, the messiness of our deepest pains and hidden secrets, those very things become the greatest opportunities for encountering God. Isaiah 53 prophetically said, Jesus was a man of sorrows, acquainted with deep grief. And it's fascinating when you watch Jesus' life on earth. In almost every story, Jesus is always moving towards other people's sorrow. A woman isolated from her sickness, a man who's called demon-possessed, a tax collector stuck in his extortionist ways, a woman shamefully collecting water from the well at noon when no one else would be there, no one else except Jesus. See, Jesus knew just how true it was that the gospel is at its best when life is at its worst. And this is why, when life brings you to your knees, when the phone call comes that breaks your heart, when the cancer report is not promising, you don't have to rush around it or get over it. You don't have to project a fully solar spirituality to impress people with manufactured joy. You can just sit in it. Sit in the sorrow and ask God to meet you there. Ours is a world that sells manufactured happiness, and that manufactured happiness, it kills us. Much better, I say, to live honestly as those who are sad, but not without hope, as those who are wounded, but never not love. So pay attention to your sadness. Ask yourself right now, what's got me sad? What's got me sad right now? And know this, in that deep sorrow in your story, be it in the past or in the present or still to come, God is coming for that part of your story this Christmas. It won't be an easy fix. There's no guarantee that on the other side of it, life will be better. But God, all the same, wants to meet you in that very place of sorrow, just like God came after Tamar's sorrow and Rahab's pain and Ruth's poverty and Bathsheba's wound and Mary's pierced soul. God is coming for that place within you, too deep for tears, too overwhelmed by other people's words, to be with you, to shelter you, to make space for you, and ultimately to redeem your story and to refine it for the purpose of God's glory. Until one day very soon, a day is coming, church, when there will be no more tears, no more sadness, no more grief, no more pain or dying, not for the mothers of the Messiah, not for an 18-year-old kid who lost her dad, not for the people who will share before you in just a moment, not even for you. For the old order of things has passed away, and the new Genesis, we've been learning about that, the new Genesis of love is here. You're about to hear from 3 people in our church family as they share about their deep grief, God's deeper presence to bring them through, to give them new eyes to see God's hope-filled future. And their testimonies are powerful because they prove what Jesus' family tree has taught us this Christmas. The gospel does its best when life is at its worst. So lean in as you listen to their words, learn from their story, benefit from their wisdom, and then when they're through, celebrate the heck out of their courage to share, and then go and tell your story to someone else. Join someone else's sorrow with your sorrow. For here's the promise this Christmas: God is there. Followers of Jesus, join sorrow.
Wow. Amen, Mark. I'll see you. That is so good. How can he be so good on video even? I mean, that is just impressive. Very impressive. Well, my mind works in very strange ways. For those of you who know me, you already know this. Cruising along in life, life is pretty blessed and good. But in the back of my mind, I always toss around these questions. And I learn mostly from tossing around questions. Several years ago, I was tossing around the question, what would happen, Lord, if? What would happen if something happened? What would happen if suffering came my way? Would I really love you? Or would I pack my bags and walk away? Would I embrace you, Lord, or would I not? The answer to that question came from a phone call about 11 years ago this month when Joni called me from Tacoma in the emergency room, and she said, totally Joni, underselling everything, I'm in the ER. I don't think I'm going to be able to drive my car. You might have to come and get it. Maybe you should come up. So, okay. I go up to Tacoma. She's in the ER and having her lungs tapped while bent over the bed in the ER, and they took a 2-liter bottle full of fluid off of her lung because she couldn't walk up the stairs to a meeting. And that started a journey of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma cancer diagnosis. Yeah, the dreaded C word that many of us know personally, intimately, in very much not exciting ways. She spent the night in the hospital that night, and I remember driving home and crawling into bed, and that was probably not one of my best nights, right? You're thinking about, oh boy, she could really die. This is not a joke. She could really pass away. And I thought, wow, I could be 55 and single. That's not pretty. No, that wouldn't be pretty. But then I thought, oh, yeah, but the hardest part of this whole thing would be, what do I say to my girls, to Krista and Nicole, if she's no longer here? How do I live the rest of my life without them having a mother? How incredibly sad that would be. And yet, while I laid there in bed contemplating this, unable to sleep, I really sensed, not in an audible way, but in an inner way, God saying, you know, Jim, you're going to be okay. You are going to be all right. In a word to me, peace, Jim. No matter what happens, peace to you. You'll be okay. Now, I know that in many ways, this really isn't my story to tell. This is Joni's story to tell. Shy, reserved, introverted Joni would never tell this story. So I'm telling it from a distance. But this began a 2-year-long grueling journey of tests, repeats, little bit of cancer left, yeah, more treatment, little bit of cancer left, more treatment, and then just like a microscopic speck of cancer left. So now it's time for a stem cell transplant. It's a crazy scientific miracle, a God miracle too. But during this time, I remember thinking, wow, why do I not have energy? Why is it hard to go to work, which I love, probably just right below family. I loved work. What is it about just this? There seemed to be this gray, like mist cloud just hovering over me. Then I couldn't describe it, but now, in retrospect, I understand that I was in the process of some pretty heavy-duty grief and sorrow as I watched the love of my life suffer. And that was tough. That was tough. And I remember thinking, man, I wonder if I'm ever going to come out of this low-lying cloud of gray. Well, after 2 years of these rounds of chemo and several days, maybe 10 days of full-on body radiation, and several rounds of chemotherapy, some costing $28,000 per dose, which causes just a wee bit of worry. God, she was right at the point of like no white blood cells, which is close to death, right? I don't know if you remember or not, but in the great theological movie, The Princess Bride, Billy Crystal's character, Miracle Max, when he's trying to revive Wesley, says, there's a big difference between being all dead and mostly dead. It just so happens your friend here is mostly dead. That was a bad impersonation, by the way. But Joni and I, in the middle of this, had to joke so that we wouldn't cry. But we did joke often that she was mostly dead. When white blood cells are zero, there's no immunity, no ability to fight infections. We were living in Seattle at that point, and we would go in for a daily count after she had her stem cell transplant. And this is an otherworldly George Jetson kind of amazing scientific thing. Blood cells are spliced, frozen to -30, re-injected, and new life begins. Took a while, like a few days. Well, you would think at that point, everything's perfect, right? She's back to life, everything's great. Not so fast. God is good, it was a miracle for sure, but in that time, one misplaced sneeze, one non-washed fruit, one connection with mold could mean serious illness or even death. And God in his grace just did this medical miracle, and it was good. But Joni and I landed in a new world after this, alive, breathing, working. Joni, of course, went right back to work. I joke, too, that she took 2 days off of work in this 2-year time. I took 6 weeks. I don't know why that happened, but it did. That's just because that's Joni. She's amazing. But these new normals, we call it, informed our life. Very much her health informed when I would retire. It informed questions about longevity. When you're at retirement age, you have to pick like what kind of plan you're going to be on based on life expectancy. That question was different than it would have been before. Questions like walking, like what to eat, endurance, balance, standing on concrete, numbness, lifting, all different, all compromised. All new, not normal, but new normal. Thankfully, with no pain though. So Joni really limited pain. And that, my friends, is grace. Darren, a friend and colleague and cancer patient at Centralia High School, was a math teacher. And in a moment of honest fellowship, he shared this verse with me. He said, "This is my life verse, Jim." And I was so impressed with it, not because he said it, but the way he said it. He said, Philippians 1:21, "But for me to live is Christ, and to die is gain." And I knew Darren meant it because he had been through a grueling stem cell transplant as well. In his beautiful mathematical and somewhat quirky mind that sometimes we made fun of him for, he turned that into a factual statement, like if to live is Christ, to die is gain. It was audacious, but it was hopeful. So even though cancer and recovery informed almost everything to him and to his family and to Joni as well, hope and peace really began to spring to life. So the question is now, how do we as the body of Christ process pain, loss, sadness, tragedy, and on one hand, and then on the other hand, gratitude, gratefulness, thankfulness, and knowing that we are in places of immense privilege. How do we measure those two things? And part of it is just being able to not split, but to integrate those things and say, yeah, those are both ands. So now, I think what happens when you arrive there is that empathy and compassion become more in the forefront. Savoring the moments become more in the forefront. Less work becomes more in the forefront, more adventure and play. Planning for a new pace becomes in the forefront. Enjoying the simple things like laughter, 3.5-year-old boys, my grandson, kids, gifts, but most of all, peace and hope, and the gift of faith that works like Joni or Darren, with that audacious hope that both Joni and Darren had. So in conclusion, what happens when you ask questions like, what will I do when suffering happens to me? How will my faith hold up? Jesus really answers those questions as a gift, because that grace and that peace is a gift. Jesus said to his disciples, in words that I need to hear often, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives do I give to you. Let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid." May your questioning and wondering lead you to peace, my friends. And now let's take a moment to hear from Amy.
those of you that don't know me, my name is Amy. For those of you that do know me, I'm just grateful I didn't trip coming up here. So about 3 years ago, I thought I had lost everything. Hello. Technical difficulties. About 3 years ago, I thought I had lost everything. I had spent the last 2 years being abused in a very intense relationship. I spent those years believing that I was not enough, not strong enough or worthy enough. I believed that I was alone. I cried, I screamed, to no one in particular at first. I went through the stages of grief, the denial, the anger. I played the what if game. I cried myself to sleep so many times that I truly lost count. Acceptance is something I've only just started experiencing. I didn't know if there was a God anymore. Did he see me? Did he understand and not care? People told me that maybe he was making me stronger. I didn't want to be stronger. One day, I realized that if I didn't leave the father of my children, I might never have the chance. A friend of mine told me that I needed to make a choice or I'd end up in a body bag. Those words hit me hard. I remember sitting on the steps of a church 3 hours into being homeless. I had showered that day, I had eaten, and I was sobbing my eyes out, not in like the movies where you see the little tear dripping down, but like bubbles coming out of my nose, sobbing. I had eaten that day. I didn't know what else to do, so I sat there and I cried. A huge black truck passed by and an angry man shouted, "Get a job, you lazy bum." I was absolutely shocked. The hardest thing I found was not being able to see or speak with my daughters. I was homeless, jobless, carless, friendless, childless. Every reason to live was taken from me. I was at my rock bottom. I began to whisper in my darkness. I used that hurt and I fought to get my life back. I surrounded myself with people that would bring me closer to God. The people at the gather hugged me and treated me as a human being. The people at Hope Alliance helped me get into a shelter. They supported me in court and helped me regain custody of my girls. We were fed, sheltered, clothed, and loved. They held me when I cried, and they protected me, and they brought me closer to God. I showed up at Harrison Square over a year ago. The first person I spoke to here was Sean, so if any of you guys know her, I saw she had children, and when they were called back to go to their service, I saw that her children went with them, and so I was like, okay, you guys can go. After the service, I go up to her, and I'm like, hey, where are my children? And she goes, well, we didn't take them. So that's how Sean and I became friends. I assured her I didn't think she had taken them, but because she had children of her own, she knew where their Sunday school was. Once she brought me to the Sunday school room, I fell in love with it. The layout of it, all the wooden toys, them sitting down and praying over their meal, it just reminded me of the church and the home that I grew up in. So God didn't swoop in and fix everything overnight. I was homeless for 7 months. That's a long time. The first month into my homeless journey, I didn't have food stamps or any way to eat. I had to eat through shelters and what they provided, and it's hard. I lost a lot of weight. But he placed people in my path who carried his love into my and my family's life. He didn't just help me survive, he helped me thrive. He gave me my dignity back and reminded me that I deserved safety and love and a future. I made so many connections with so many people, down to my bus drivers, the ones with listening ears and applesauce to give to my kids at every stop. One of them helped me get my first car. I can't describe my gratefulness. They describe me as their mascot, but I think of them as family. Speaking of family, The Lewis County Gospel Mission has made one of the biggest impacts of my life. That first month of homelessness, they were where I ate almost every day, a real meal. They gave me a job. Janelle put up with training me. And my favorite part of that job was that I got to treat other people in my situation as people. I didn't judge them. I got to serve the people that needed it most. I got to give back to the homeless community I was once a part of. I worshiped God through service and song. My best friend Cindy and I still sing his praise while we're closing the building, loudly and obnoxiously. I thank God for the woman he is shaping me to be now. Someone who can stand beside others in their hardest moments and say, "You're not alone. I've been through this and I'm here too."
Scroll through my notes. Oh. Is that better? Okay. Ooh, we got a lot of notes. Really a lot. Good morning. There are more moments in life that feel so heavy, so overwhelming, that we wonder if we'll ever make it through. I lived through seasons like that, seasons of grief, uncertainty, and loneliness. But as I look back now, I can see something I couldn't see then. Every one of those hard, painful moments became a place where God's faithfulness was revealed to me. When we moved here in 2018, it felt like stepping off of a cliff. No family, no home, no plan except to trust God. There were seven of us in a hotel room for 4 months. And I remember lying there awake some nights wondering, how in the world is this going to work? Where are you, God? How are we going to survive this? But somehow every day, he gave us just enough. Enough hope, enough grace. I didn't always feel his presence in those moments. But looking back, I can see he was carrying us. And then there was the moments when I felt completely alone. Times when the heaviness of life pressed so hard on my chest that I didn't know how to keep going. That's where a phone call would come, or a text, or an email, out of nowhere. Sometimes from Reverend Mark, sometimes from Carol and Mark, and sometimes from the Allens. People who probably had no idea what I was feeling at that exact moment, yet there they were, showing up right when I needed it. The encouragement reminding me that God sees me. And I always laugh because I joke that I'm type A negative, both in my personality and my blood type. Meaning that I could be a little intense sometimes, a little stubborn, and occasionally a little negative, just a little. So when troubles hit, my natural instinct is to try handling everything myself. But God, in his kindness, sent people into my life who reached in and lifted me up when I didn't want to ask for help. Every unexpected call, every thinking of you text, every moment when someone said exactly what I needed to hear, those weren't coincidences. They were reminders of God's promise. God gave us that he will never leave us or forsake us. And sometimes he shows that faithfulness through people. In the middle of my grief, in the middle of my fear, in the middle of exhaustion, God used ordinary people to do extraordinary things, to remind me that I was not alone, and that the beauty of redemption, God doesn't just pull us out of our hard moments, he walks with us. He walks with us through them. He takes the seasons we think will break us and somehow uses them to build us. He turns loneliness into connection. He turns fear into faith. He turns uncertainty into testimony. If you had told me back in that hotel room in 2018 that one day I would look back and see God's hand all over everything, I wouldn't have believed you. But I see it now. The pain had purpose, the hardship had meaning, and every step was covered by God's faithfulness. So if you're in a hard season right now, if you feel alone, overwhelmed, or unsure, I want you to hear this. God is already working in the places you can't see yet. He is sending people, preparing solutions, arranging grace for moments you haven't walked into yet. My grief-filled moments became redemption stories. My loneliness became proof of his presence. And those small, unexpected signs from friends, from pastors, from people who simply obeyed a nudge from God became reminders that his promise is true. He will never leave you. He will never forsake you. And he is always, always faithful. Thank you.